Week 1 in college football in 2021 is jam-packed. 2021 is going to be an incredible season. Now, I'm going to do more on this down the road. I think it's going to be a renaissance season in college football. I got several reasons why I believe that. So let's table that thought. Just bookmark it. But what you'll have in Week 1 is a perfect microcosm of what you guys really didn't get to have a whole lot of last year. When people ask you, what do you love so much about college football? Everyone has their own unique answer, but it's some form of tradition, pageantry. I always emphasize the urgency because every single week matters. You can't be affording to lose a whole bunch of games. But also, you love the environments, and you just didn't get some of that last year. And now we see state after state after state giving you every reason to think that you're going to have some full stadiums, and you're going to have things returning to as close to normalcy as we've seen in the better part of 2 years around here. And so, I think for that reason, among several others, you're going to have so much stuff delivered to you this year that you have always claimed to have loved about college football. And since you've been missing it for a little while, it may mean a little bit more. It may even bring a tear to the eye. But I'll tell you, you don't have to wait. It's going to be in Week 1. Week 1 is really loaded. Our philosophy all the while around here, as we tee this up in a second, is to remind you we are not a show. Late Kick has never been, nor will it ever be a show that looks at a game and says, all right, like, for example, Indiana versus Iowa. Do I think either of those teams are going to make the playoff? If the answer is no, push it off to the side. Doesn't matter. We don't do that around here. We don't do the projected playoff rankings after Week 1. We just don't bother with that foolishness. If you're into that, that's fine. There are a lot of places you can go for that. Around here, we don't revolve our content plan around the postseason. It is regular season. That's what we care about around here. With that in mind, I want to tell you how loaded this Week 1 is, and it's not just one day. Saturday is going to be great. But, man, Jesse's been making this graphic all day. I think he had to do some of it by hand. Man, this is a lot to process. I want to tell you what you're about to be served up. It's going to be on a platter for you starting on Thursday night, and it's going to stretch all the way to Monday. So this is that Labor Day weekend. This is when college football kicks off. Thursday night, it starts with Ohio State at Minnesota. First time you've seen Ohio State, obviously, since their loss in the national title game. Probably going to see C.J. Stroud at quarterback. You get to see that wide receiver core. First look at that defense, by the way. That's really what I'm focused on, to be honest with you, more so than anything. And also, you know, Minnesota is going to be overlooked here. I think Alabama versus Miami, that's another example of Miami team going to be solid. You know, Miami and Minnesota are solid programs. They'll be double-digit underdogs in these games, though. So I wonder twofold about those games as we start this preview off. I wonder, can they put up a fight? And even if the answer is no, are we going to have so much intrinsic betting value baked into those teams after you see them in Week 1 because they get maybe defeated soundly by superior teams and they're made to look a little bit worse than they are? So that Thursday, that's going to be cool. This Friday game is serious because North Carolina is going to be mentioned on the fringes of the playoff, and if they can't be, then it's going to be because Clemson's in their way. But none of it's going to have anything to do with Virginia Tech. However, that's where they're going to start the season. And if you have a full house in Blacksburg, Virginia again, and we're talking, as we will probably for about the next 3 or 4 months, about what we think we know about Virginia Tech, and we think we know about North Carolina. Well, what you're talking about with North Carolina is going to be a whole lot of, I think they may be the second best team in the ACC. I think Sam Howell may be this. I think this offense may be that. It's always trust but verify, especially in college football. So you build up your entire offseason, preview magazine season comes, media days, fall camp, but then that Week 1 comes. Remember Iowa State? We thought they were good last year. They were. Didn't help them against Louisiana in Week 1. And that environment right there on the road in Blacksburg, Virginia, man, it's even if you don't think Virginia Tech's going to be good, the thing about playing teams early in the year is you can fool people. You can fool players into thinking they're good in Week 1. Virginia Tech may end up a 6-6 team. You're going to get a fight from them like they're a 12-0 perennial title contender in Week 1. I have not gotten you to Saturday yet. Those are just the first 2 games. Then comes Saturday, and it's going to start at noon Eastern time, and it's not going to stop until very late. How about that Indiana at Iowa game? I know you may not be used to this concept yet, but Indiana's a top 20 team. Will be this year, was last year. Iowa, top 20 team. Will be, I think, this year. Spencer Petras, as we have talked about, a lot's on his shoulders at quarterback. But this will, I think, be the most underrated game out of this entire Week 1 slate. You mark my words. It's going to be a lot of talk about Georgia, Clemson. We'll get to them in just a second. What's Bama going to look like? What's Ohio State going to look like? You got Notre Dame, Florida State we're going to talk about in just a second. But this game right here, this is the one that when you're talking about who's there down the stretch that maybe you didn't expect at the beginning of the season, well, one of these teams is going to be a prime candidate. Now, you may expect Indiana this year, maybe you don't, but this is going to be a really, really good game. You've also got a bigger magnitude game, I think, bigger brands combined in the Big Ten in that Penn State-Wisconsin game. I mean, that one's really good too. Penn State had a disastrous 2020, and I thought Wisconsin had one too, but see, Wisconsin was well on their way, and then a lot of stuff derailed them too, part injury, part COVID. And the thing about it is, these are two really good teams that may be overlooked going into the year for different reasons too. I'm extremely excited to look at Wisconsin's offense in this game. And for that matter, Penn State's too. Finally, you had a spring with a new offensive coordinator, Mike Yurcich, formerly Tom Yurcich on this show. Mike Yurcich, you get to see the Penn State defense. What are we looking like at linebacker there? Have we found some adequate pieces? And Louisiana at Texas. The aforementioned Billy Napier still led Louisiana team heading to Texas. Everyone remembers week 1 last year. And you got a new coach at Texas because the previous staff didn't get it done. And unlike last year, where I think Louisiana was a 2-touchdown underdog, it was somewhere between 10 and 14 points. This will be looked at, it is now, and will be looked at from now until this game kicks off as a game where, I mean, you have no business being a double-digit dog. I don't know where that line will open, but it won't be all that fat. And so this will be looked at, as it should, as a competitive game that Louisiana has a distinct possibility of winning. It's also going to be looked at as a game that Texas should win. It's one of those. So that one's going to be really fun, too. I don't know that one's going to be under the radar. It's Sark's first game. It's Texas, and also Louisiana, they've made their mark. So I don't think that one's going to be all that underrated. There are 3 big boys featuring SEC teams here that I wanted to touch on. Bama, Miami. This is the first time we get to see what I think will be an ultra-improved Alabama defense. I'm not going to go as far as to say it's ever going to be strength of their team again, but I think Bama's defense is going to be really good. Talking to someone the other day that saw every one of their scrimmages, and there aren't many of those people walking planet Earth this spring. And, they're suffice it to say, they're very excited about that defense. But we also get to see Bryce Young for the first time. And for that matter, Derek King. They believe at Miami he's going to be ready to go in week 1. So we'll get to see, for better or for worse, we'll get to see how many strides that Miami offense has made. Georgia-Clemson is the biggest game of the weekend. Georgia-Clemson is going to be one of the biggest games of the year. These are 2 top 5 teams, regardless of what poll you look at. I'm sure the JP poll will have both of them top 5 too. I don't really need to do much to build the marquee for this one, but I am extremely interested if Clemson were to lose this game, if Clemson were to drop this game. I think they're going to open as a slight favorite. We'll see how that happens. We've still got a while. But if they were to lose this game, it's going to depend a lot, obviously, on how competitive the loss looks, if it's 27-24 versus 31-13. But if Clemson were to lose this game, I'm interested to hear what the talking point will be sort of nationally. We exist in our own little bubble over here, but the rest of the national cats wonder if they are willing to. Does anyone have a set on them enough to walk in and say, we've in the past said that UCF can't have a shot. Cincinnati can't have a shot. I've been one of them, by the way. But we've said they can't have a shot because they don't have a strong enough schedule. Well, I'm looking at Clemson's schedule the rest of the way. They needed this one. Otherwise, they're going to need a lot of help from the ACC. Someone's going to have to emerge, maybe a couple of teams that we didn't see coming. Otherwise, I don't know that Clemson can get fat enough on this schedule. I just wonder if that would be a talking point. Now, if Clemson wins, no big deal. Now, my actual belief here is even if they lose, if they run the table rest of the way, win the conference, they'll be in. Just interested to hear the talking point. LSU at UCLA, I would imagine, is going to be a later game. Here's the thing about this. This is technically week 1. Director Emeritus Colin, I don't know if you and I talked about this. LSU opens at UCLA. He had to correct me on this the other day. I sat out here and said, who do they play? Who do they play? And Colin had to come in my ear and say, UCLA. LSU's first game is against UCLA. UCLA's first game is not against LSU. This is one of those let's schedule Hawaii in week 0 ordeals. So UCLA will already have a game under their belt. And they get LSU at home. I don't know what in the world LSU is going to look like. Right now, we don't know who in the world is going to start at quarterback for LSU. I think the slight betting favorite has shifted. I would even go as far as to say amongst Tiger fans, and I've spoken to them a lot this week for different reasons, I would even venture to say you'd probably find more Max Johnson money down there right now than Miles Brennan. I don't know if that extends to the coaching room, but nevertheless, that's not settled. So that one's going to be ultra intriguing. And also, we extend to Sunday, because you've got that standalone pre-Labor Day Eve game. And this one's going to be Notre Dame against Florida State. Now, this is Mike Norvell's second year in Tallahassee. Mackenzie Milton is one of our spotlight players. We're paying as close attention to him as we are, well, I won't say any player. He's one of our 10 most focused on players, and there are a lot of players out there. But I want to ask this simple question that we have plenty of time to dive into over the course of the next couple of months. Who do you think will have the quarterback edge in this particular game? Jack Cohn's coming in. He's like 35 years old, and multi-year starter at Wisconsin, comes in, and he is the starter now at Notre Dame. He's established. You've seen him before. You know what he has. You've also seen Mackenzie Milton at a prior stop at UCF. The difference is he's coming off major reconstructive knee surgery, and there's a lot of question mark around him. If the question marks are answered, I don't know that Florida State may not end up having the quarterback edge in that game. Now, it's 4 quarters, so who in the world knows how that plays out, even if you do have a quarterback edge. But you want to talk about reverse engineering. Remember week 1 last year? That's when Georgia Tech went down there and beat Florida State. What if Florida State turns things all the way around and they top Notre Dame in Doak Campbell Stadium to start 2021? That'd be interesting. It's still not over, because then you go to Labor Day and you're out on the lake and you eat copious amounts of hot dogs, and who in the world knows what else you guys are ingesting, knowing our audience. But when you're done with all that, you go in, and I know World Wrestling Entertainment owns the rights to Monday Night Raw, but if they didn't, could I not call Lane Kiffin being in Atlanta, Georgia, primetime standalone game on a Monday night? Could we not call that Monday Night Raw? Yeah, I think I'll call it that anyway. I probably just won't get the licensing. I'll probably get slapped on the wrist for it. Ole Miss against Louisville on a Monday. Again, standalone. Beautiful words in our business. Standalone game. And then, and only then, will we be able to put a bow on week 1 of college football. Think about what you've learned already. You've been able to see Bama. You've been able to see Ohio State against very competitive teams. You've seen probably a knockdown, drag-out fight between Clemson and Georgia. You've gotten to see you've gotten to see really 4 of the other contenders in the Big Ten: Penn State, Wisconsin, Indiana, Iowa. Sark and Texas have to walk a tightrope against Billy Napier and Louisiana. You've got all that, and you get to find out if LSU is going to be back to any kind of 2019 form or anywhere close to it. And you don't even have to wait to Saturday for it to start. So North Carolina at Virginia Tech, I think, is a sleeper game. There is so much to love about week 1. 2021 in college football, just start it now. It's going to be a renaissance year. And it's not one of those deals where you'll have to wait until like week 7 to see, does it feel normal? Does it feel? I think you'll be back to normal after week 1.